Today we're going to be making a concrete planter that is self-watering. Now there's lots of different types of mechanisms that you can use for self-watering planters, and they do different things, and certain mechanisms work for some types of plants and others work for other types of plants. The one that we're going to make today is a self-wicking planter, and what that means is we're going to be taking a nylon rope and putting the ends into a reservoir of water, looping it up through the soil. The benefit of this is that it provides continuous, slow water to provide moisture to the plant. So plants like succulents that like to dry out in between waterings are not a great fit for this. The plants that are a great fit for this are indoor houseplants like orchids or other tropical plants. So let's start making. First, you'll need to create the holes for the wicking cord to pass through. To do this, I filled a straw with 100% silicone caulk to about a couple of inches deep. The reason I use a silicone is to make removing the straws much easier than if the ends are filled with hot glue, like I've done for some other projects. So let the caulk set, and once dry, cut the straw so you have two pieces at 1/4 inch. Next, you'll need to find the stopping points for the cement. So you should trim the heights of your molds if they are taller than what you plan to make. Place the outer mold for the planter into your mold for the bottom reservoir, and mark this location. Do the same for your bottom inner mold. Though I did trim the height of this bottom inner mold, unfortunately I decided to take a couple of shortcuts by not trimming the heights of the other molds. This caused me to have some difficulty, which you'll see in future steps. Now, once your stopping locations are marked, use painter's tape to line up the marks so you can get a nice straight cut. Next, use hot glue to glue those silicone-filled straws to the bottom. Space them equally apart. Here I was checking to see what the height I needed my inner planter mold to be. Be sure to account for the 1/4 inch straws and subtract that from the height. I measured the height and marked the stopping point, but I should have just gone ahead and trimmed off the excess height. You'll see shortly that by not trimming these to size, I ended up having trouble getting everything level at the top and smooth. Now add something weighted, like play sand, to the inside of these inner molds to prevent them from floating up. Spray some vegetable oil around and underneath the inner molds to help with demolding. Next, mix the cement. The consistency should be like thin whipped pudding. Pour the mix into the mold and then take the inner mold, center it, and insert it either to the stopping point, or hopefully you trimmed this and you can stop it when it's flush. Vibrate your mold to help release air bubbles. Now you can see my trouble with leveling and smoothing. This took a while to get everything as even as possible and still wasn't quite there. Let this cure for a couple of hours and then demold it. Since my mold was tapered, it came out with very little effort. Hang on to this bucket and add a little bit of sand. You'll need this again shortly. Now sand the edges. I often take excess concrete mix and shape it into the shape of a sanding block. This works better than just about anything for removing very rough edges. I then work my way down to finer grit pads. Next, remove the straws. And since I didn't trim my molds, I completely misjudged my stopping points. And this caused me to have to drill through the rest of the distance. But it was just a short distance that I needed to do that. Now you'll mix the cement for the reservoir. This will be the same thin, whipped pudding consistency. Pour the cement and place the inner mold in the center. Now place the same bucket you used for the planter mold and place it in the top of the reservoir. This will ensure a nice level fit. And be sure to use a level so that you know everything will sit flush. I removed the bucket after about 10 minutes and let this cure for about an hour. I don't typically paint or seal my planters because I want them to be somewhat porous. However, since this is a self-wicking planter, I needed the water to not evaporate too quickly. So I painted the outside of the planter and also the inside, but only for the visible portion. I did paint both the inside and the outside of the bottom reservoir. It's a good idea to follow this up with a sealer to help keep the finish in good shape. I just used my typical water-based concrete sealer, but any acrylic paint sealer will do. Now for the wick. Thread the self-wicking cord through the bottom of the planter so that it creates a U-shape inside. Leave some excess cord in the reservoir because sometimes the water wicks upward more than you want, and tying a knot in the ends can slow that down. Also, to help prevent the ends from fraying, carefully use a lighter to just singe them. Now plant your orchid or other tropical type of plant, and be sure the cord is touching the soil. And finally, fill the reservoir with water, then put the cords inside and place the planter on top.